The other side of the affordability question, besides providing housing, those kind of things, of course, is growing the economy, creating jobs. Particularly, again, in this region, we have either people who don't have work or skilled jobs that don't have people.
Okay.
So what does your party plan to do to encourage economic growth, especially in the Bay of Quinte region?
Okay, so back to what we were talking about before, 60,000 new green jobs. We're going to train 60,000 people into green technology, and that's going to really help this transition out of fossil fuel. In addition to that, I think that we should be offering free tuition for the positions that we need. If we're having such a problem filling in these critical roles, why are we not pushing people through school to get them? Why are we not providing opportunities for them to grow and do what we need them to do?
Okay. I think the follow-up to that is, training and moving people into new jobs is great for someone like my daughter's age, who's, in the, someone like me, somebody who's, a little closer to retirement. That's a very scary prospect. How do you deal with the part of the population that is sort of comfortable in the traditional jobs, even though they may not be secure?
Okay. I think that there's going to be a good transition over the next decade for this. And there's a lot of people that feel like they might get left behind. And I totally understand that. But what we can do for these people is make life more affordable outside of their workplace. And like I said, having better transit opportunities and more affordable housing will make it a more secure future for people that aren't necessarily able to switch into this new green economy that we're talking about. I think that this transitions well into another conversation about healthcare, because of what you're saying is that we have a large population that, might not be a little bit more mobile in what they're able to do for the future. But what is their reality is that the long-term care and at-home care is going to be priority in the next couple decades for them as well. And if you'd like to talk about that, I'd like to say that we're not going to let workers who have spent their entire lives helping on Ontario economy fall through the cracks just because we need to move and progress.
I think we've already touched on this already, the affordability question and the economy. In this region, there are actually plenty of jobs here, but they don't pay a living wage, and there are skilled labor jobs that are just not being filled here. So what does your party plan to do to encourage the filling of those jobs and that there is economic growth here when there's so much to offer?
A couple of things there. I think that, again, the market tends to fill its needs. And so there are a lot of jobs out there that are vacant right now, and they are typically the ones that are not paying the best wage. So at some point, those companies are going to realize that we need those people. We're going to have to boost that wage. And I believe that that's more effective than saying we're going to come in with across-the-board minimum wage increase. That tends to be a Band-Aid solution. Letting the market dictate the rates of pay is more of a permanent solution. And going forward, I think we're already starting to see that happen. In terms of training people for those job vacancies, if there are jobs where there just aren't people that are capable of doing it, we have an education system that is flexible enough that we can offer programs within the current framework to make sure that we're training people, whether that's at a community college level or even at a high school level. It's possible to put in programs that will turn out people that are capable of taking on those job vacancies.
How specifically will you have the market measure what is the wage? You mentioned the minimum wage as a Band-Aid. So how will your party make sure the market measures what is a more acceptable wage for people who are working those jobs that right now aren't exactly a living wage for people to get by?
I think the market will do that. They'll be able to tell when they're paying enough when they get people applying for the job. So if they're putting a job out there, for example, a worker at a fast food restaurant, and they're not getting any uptake on that, people are not applying, chances are they're not paying enough. That's what I mean by the market sort of correcting itself.
So going back to training, just to get that in there, you mentioned college or even the high school level for that training. Is retraining for skilled labor a better option? And is it possible for people to perhaps, I guess, taking courses, it does cost them money all the same, even if it is for retraining. Can they do that at the least cost so they can say, I can go in there and get the skills that I need?
Sure. And I think that Ontario governments have always had programs in place where if there was some gap that there would be some incentive for people to retrain into a new position. And I can see us continuing that type of thing. And that's something that can be done without, again, injecting a huge amount of money into the program, just by rejigging what's already there. And I know that our education system does need some work, just that it's been neglected over a number of years, and there are some gaps there that really need to be repaired. But within bringing that back up into a more modern setup that we need, at the same time, we should be flexible in being able to rejig those programs to what we need to do.
For sure. And our question 3 is the other side of the affordability question is the economy, and you kind of touched on it in the last question. But in this region, we seem to have many jobs that don't pay a living wage or skilled labor jobs we can't fill. What is your party plan to do to ensure we have economic growth in those areas in this region?
Yeah, so we're focused on continuing to create jobs, and we have seen manufacturing jobs coming back to Ontario. You just have to look at the auto sector to see the investments that are being made, multi-billion-dollar investments in brand new electric vehicle platforms or hybrid vehicle platforms at all 5 of our Ontario automakers. And that, of course, keeps jobs in the supply chain, which is so important as well. But we do have to ensure, to your question, that we're training the people for the jobs of the future. And that's why our Skills Development Fund has been so important, so that we're training skilled trades workers and we're training people that can work in coding when it comes to IT jobs, because that really is the way of the future. So either through skills development funding, through partners in the community like the Quinte Home Builders Association, Quinte Immigration Services, Quinte Economic Development Commission through programs like Elevate Plus. Obviously, Loyalist College has a huge role to play when it comes to training the workers of the future. And places like Loyola, which is operated through the Algonquin Lakeshore Catholic School Board, creating PSW jobs that we know are so necessary in the region as well. We have to start training people for the jobs of the future, and that's why it's been very important to extend the OYAP program, the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, in our high schools, not just for grades 11 and 12, but for grades 9 and 10 now, to introduce the skilled trades to younger people. You can make a 6-figure salary really easy and call your own shots if you pick up a skilled trade. And so introducing those trades at an earlier age is really important.
Yeah, and the attraction of people who maybe are in a different position or different job, or someone that was in the trades and then out of the trades, do you see any room for getting that taken care of? Yeah,
retraining or second career training or third or fourth career training, depending on what it might be, is super important. It's not just reaching out to young people, and that's really been part of our Driving Prosperity plan, which has revitalized the auto sector. One of the key priorities that was brought to our attention by a partner like the Auto Parts Manufacturing Association was we need to ensure that those guys that have been turning the lug nut on the vehicle's rims and tires going on a vehicle are also trained when it comes to IT and running a robot and that type of job as well. Advanced manufacturing, it's called. So we've been able to bring in programs that are training the auto worker of the past for the auto jobs of the future, and that's just one example.
The other side of the affordability question is the economy. In this region, we seem to have many jobs that don't pay a living wage or skilled labor jobs we can't fill. What does your party plan to do to ensure we have economic growth in this region?
Such a very good question. So yes, the NDP, we've always been on the side of workers and local businesses. We saw in the pandemic how small businesses and micro businesses had to shut their doors while the Walmarts of the world stayed open and made record profits. Well, our community members who contribute to the community through their businesses, but also employ others, had to shut their doors. And so first thing we're going to do is we are going to put a path forward for $20 minimum wage over the first term. And we're going to work with business owners who might be a little nervous as to how will that affect me. We're going to work with them to make sure they are supported and they have a path that they're building out to ensure that their staff are being paid that minimum wage. One thing I do want to highlight, because I know every party's talking about all these jobs we're going to do, but nobody's talking about the post-secondary situation we're in. So as we know, a lot of these jobs require an education. And as we know, Loyalist Colleges is here and has some incredible programs. But one thing we don't talk about is Ontario. We're investing 50% less than the provincial average in Canada in post-secondary education. And we have the lowest per student funding. And, Doug Ford has cut OSAP. He's making it harder for our students to qualify for loans. And they eliminated the interest rate grace period. So a couple of things are happening. A lot of our students don't see themselves in post-secondary education because of how expensive it is. And then a lot of the students, they don't qualify for the grants. And so when you're not able to let people go to school and not graduate with $100K of debt. Like I saw a tweet this morning. Yeah, I work so hard. I take out a student loan to go to college to graduate to pay off my student loan. It's wrong. The system is broken. And we know that education is a great equalizer. So we are going to eliminate interest rates on loans to those who are still paying off student loans. And we're going to convert those loans into grants, so that more people can graduate and be proud of their accomplishments and go right into the workforce and start contributing to the economy and not just paying back loans. So that's one thing I'm excited about.
There's been a lot of focus on creating green jobs and, of course, climate change having a big effect on everything. What is your party's plan to do to bring greener jobs to the region?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago on land back and what does land back mean. And one of the people interviewed said, in their culture, they said we look at the state of the land and we how healthy the land is how healthy our people are. And I think it's safe to say when you have governments just plowing through green spaces and paving over our wetlands in favor of corporate greed, our health isn't doing too well. I thought that was real. The one neat thing through the pandemic is when everything was shut down and all of a sudden you saw this wildlife coming out and you can see the stars better. And it just, everything felt so alive outside, right? So your question was around jobs. We're going to create 1 million jobs as part of the Green New Deal. We're going to do that as part of our plan to expand our hydro capacity. So really creating industries with that green, forward-thinking, sustainable view, that lens. So we're going to be able to do that. Our plan, if you want to check it out, is the New Democratic Green Plan, and it's quite a complex plan, but it's based on values of equity, affordability, and reconciliation. It's really rooted in justice and just committed to a just transition, which promises nobody and no community is left behind. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to create a retrofit program, which again will generate $15.2 billion in annual economic activity and create 100,000 jobs. So that's for the creation of new buildings. And then we're also going to provide grants to families for easy, zero interest on bill financing. So we want to make sure families who want to electrify their homes and make them more energy efficient have the ability to do that with finances provided by the government. So yeah, and the other one thing, clean water for First Nations communities. We shouldn't still be talking about this, yet here we are. So that is another commitment that the Ontario NDP stands behind. Tyendinaga still has a number of community members who don't have clean water. That is shameful. Shameful. And we need to fix that. It needs to be a priority from any government.
And the other side of the affordability question is the economy. In this region, we seem to have many jobs that do not pay a living wage or skilled labor jobs that employers can't fill. What does your party plan to do to ensure we have economic growth in this region?
Yes, two very large key issues, not only in the Bay of Quinte, but across Ontario. But I do feel like they are a little hyper-localized in rural ridings, unfortunately, due to every single government that came before us, and we need to change that. So when it comes to the skilled trades, we need to ensure that we're incentivizing our youth and all people to get back into apprenticeships or to get retrained or to partner with our institutions like Loyalist College to ensure that the programs that we're providing to our students are programs that have jobs right here in the Bay of Quinte. As a biotechnologist, for example, it often can be difficult to find a job within a 100-kilometer radius in biotech. I would have loved to work on vaccines. I would have loved to work directly in the pandemic for the pandemic when it comes to COVID-19. But I ended up switching gears and becoming a project manager and a communications coordinator. And obviously, arguably, one or the other may, help an equal amount. But of course, we want to ensure that our youth can work within their field. And I would love to eventually return to the sciences, but we need to ensure that the jobs that we have here are jobs that we can fill with the programs that we have here.
And that's part of it. There are the living wage issue, especially as the cost of living and especially housing gets so high. Many people, even with two incomes, can't afford a home, not just to buy one, but to rent one because the cost of rent's been gone up so much. So how do you work with employers to try to fill those jobs when by taking them, they may be putting them at an economic disadvantage?
100%. We are looking to move away from the minimum wage into a regional living wage. And I'm very passionate about this particular announcement because it will help particularly our rural ridings who may have a cost of living that's much higher than a lot of the ridings that surround us. So we are going to be implementing a regional living wage. Starting at our minimum wage will start at $16 an hour, but we then will convert to this living wage so that hopefully individuals on two incomes can thrive, and individuals on one income, or an individual doesn't have to have three incomes and can really thrive on that one singular income. But of course, that does also affect our small businesses who have to account for that wage increase. So we do have plans in place to help them as well. Things like removing incorporation fees for new entrepreneurs and businesses, and taking off any fees for small businesses in the next 2 years provincially.